Well, hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. You know, today I'm going to be tackling or starting to tackle a whole new area of the car that's I think is going to be one of the biggest challenges for me on this car. Just stay tuned. So guys, what I'm starting on today is starting to remove the rear quarter panels on the car in preparation for installing the new ones. I've done a fair amount of preparation. I've done a fair amount of study. I've watched, I think it's Jason White, who's been restoring Jerry Heasley's 1967 Shelby. And there's a lot of similarities in a lot of the work he's doing on that car. Now, I'm not going to follow, obviously, what he's doing. He's building the concourse restoration. For me, I'm building, I think, a really nice driver. So I'm going to show you some of the things I'm doing in preparation, and then I'll let you follow along the actual disassembly or the removal of these rear quarter panels. So in preparation, what I've done is I've just remounted the doors so that I could get a good alignment for this B-pillar and this gap. And you know, the intent there is to try to maintain my gaps and get a good clean alignment along this B-pillar here, which is going to remain. And so that, as well as I've mounted the trunk back here, trunk lid, so that I could get proper alignment and gaps along the back of the car here. This, obviously, since this piece is going to remain, and it's really my lineup piece, and it's my reference point, because eventually I'm going to be taking off, you know, all this quarter panel here, and I'm going to be replacing this piece as well, and this taillight panel. So my points here on both sides are going to be the critical points, and so I'm keeping them stable. So after marking all of these spot welds to the best of my ability that I could locate with a black Sharpie, I've gone in and used my center punch and a hammer, you know, to get the center of that spot weld. And then I've gone in with a 1/8 drill bit and put a little bit more of a dent in there, and that's all for the purpose of being able to, you know, get this cutter in place so that it doesn't walk on the spot weld. I've also tried to identify these along here as well in preparation for using my cutter bit. So the other thing I've got to do is I've identified where the lead seams are, and they're not, you know, it's kind of obvious, but I went ahead and took my wire brush grinder and just kind of buffed over, and you know, I know that my lead's going to run along here and along here. Okay, and so I'm going to take my torch eventually and heat this up and melt all this lead out. Following, I think, Jason White, who's doing the Shelby restoration for Jerry Heasley, I'm pretty much following his pattern. I'll put a link down in the description. It kind of gives you a pattern for what I'm trying to do here. Now, I went ahead and drilled all the way through these because this piece is going to be discarded. And so this will be my plug weld when I put the new quarter panel into there. Then I can plug weld to the new. So that's why I went ahead and drilled through both of those. Now with these, I'm going to attempt to just go through the top piece of sheet metal. This is the piece that's going to be replaced. I really don't want to drill all the way through. But if I do, I make a mistake, I'll be able to, you know, weld it back up. I've got a copper bar I can lay back here if I need to fill in if I drill too far. So I'm going to attempt again just to get through this top layer of metal. Alright, so here's a part that I think is going to be a little more tricky. Something I haven't done before on this car is trying to melt this lead out. And everything I've studied and watched, whether it be Peterson Restoration or Jason White, is just attempting not to put too much heat on an area that might warp the piece of metal I need to keep. So with that in mind, you know, this is a piece I need to keep, and so I'm trying to keep my flame going somewhat away from that panel, try not to overheat it. And likewise up here, try not to overheat the roof panel that I'm trying to maintain and keep. So I'll try to move my flame away from the roof portion in order to get this lead to start to melt out. So what I'm using is just a little MAP gas handheld torch here to start trying to melt this stuff out. So let's give it a shot. All right, so I think I've got most of that out of there. I was starting to burn. There was a little bit of primer, I think, up here, paint that I probably should have ground off, but it starts to burn a little bit to get down to the bare metal before I start melting this lead. So what I've got to do is buff this up, identify these plug welds here, and get those drilled out. Do the same thing to the other side. Looks like they've put these spot welds kind of straddling the two metals there in a lot of these cases. Some up here at the start and the end, they've got a couple of all the way through. But I think I've got to drill all the way through 3 pieces of metal here. A little hard to see. Looks like there's a MIG weld there, a plug weld. And some MIG welding here. You can see the part number of the sheet metal here once the lead's melted off. All right, so let me get these drilled and grind out some of this MIG weld here and get prepared to take this thing off. All right. Okay, guys, let me show you where I'm at. I've been so careful trying not to mess anything up. It's taking me probably 4 times as long as it should, but I'm just gingerly, you know, just kind of delicately trying to take this quarter panel off. You know, it looks like you know what, but I haven't messed anything up yet. All right, so I did cut this full piece out here just to give me a view of what I'm doing, and then I've started back up here, kind of carefully trying to peel this back without messing up the inner structure. It's likewise here, you know, just trying to carefully take this piece off. I will eventually get up to pulling this, separating the roof from the quarter panel from the inner structure, and pulling this out. And then I'll have to kind of maybe recut this a little bit to get it closer. From looking at what Jason White did on Jerry Heasley's Shelby, he used a glue to come back and glue the new quarter panel on here. I don't know that I'm going to do anything like that. I'm probably going to weld it, but I am trying to be careful. He did really stress the fact that if you started trying to drill out these spot welds, that you'd end up just ruining this drip rail. And so, again, trying to be cautious, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not drilling anything on this drip rail to keep its integrity, and then come around and probably just kind of tack or stitch weld the quarter panel on here. But either way, I'm going to be careful no matter what I do. So you can see I've got my welds pretty well drilled out here. I'm getting to a point where if I get these all out, then I'll be able to take this piece off. And so eventually this will come off as well, but I'm trying to do it, like you say, a little bit at a time. And, you know, just be careful with it. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I've got complete new assembled wheel wells, so the inner and outer is going to be replaced. So I'm not too terribly worried about that. I left it here just because it's welded to this inner structure, and it's what's keeping me stable right there. So eventually I'll come and go ahead and take this out and put in the new wheel well. All right, let me get to cutting and pulling, and when I get to a point where I can pull this off, I'll come back and show you what I'm doing. Listen, guys, I'm going to tell you what, this has been a chore. You would have thought where this brass was back here would be easier, maybe a malleable, but it is some hard, tough stuff to break through. You pretty much got to get your grinder, cutting wheel out, get through a lot of that. I've got these broken off, and get this last little piece off. I've got to clean this area up and then take out this piece underneath the roof. You know, I'm getting it, but I'm going to tell you what, it is a chore. There are no two ways about it. You know, if you're a Jason White or a Peterson, you do this day in and day out, that's great. But I'm a DIYer here, and you know, the best thing I can tell you is that just take your time, don't be in a hurry. If you're in a hurry, you're going to mess up some steel, and that's really going to get you in trouble. But, you know, I've been kind of, again, being very careful, and I think it's paid off, although it's taken me a lot of time to get to this point. Well, let me get it on off of here. I'll quit talking and get the work done. So, you know, the turtle might win the race here eventually. This has been one of the biggest challenges so far, but I'm sure there'll be many more. But I'm thrilled to death to get that one quarter panel out with very little damage. I should be able to fit that, once I clean this off, I should be able to fit that other panel right under here, tap that down. This is where the lead was at, so it's already, you know, depressed in. So with some the proper filler, I should be good on that joint. Okay. Well. So what I need to do now is I'm going to take my my wire wheel and try to buff this down a little bit so I can identify these welds, hit them with a black magic marker, and just do what I've done everywhere else to start drilling out these welds. So anyway, that's where I'm going to get. The other thing I'm going to do, again following Jason White, is taking my cutoff wheel and lightly cut along this drip rail, and then eventually, and then take my little small grinder, hit these spot welds on the back without damaging the drip rail, and then peel off the remainder just with a pair of needle nose. You know, sometimes I can identify these spot welds a little bit better just by running the flashlight along, you know, lengthwise along the seam, and then those little spot welds cast a little bit of a shadow, and it makes it a little bit easier to identify them when otherwise they're, you know, really hard to see. Now this is I think a braze weld if it's underneath. If I could get that lead off of there, but I'm sure I've got a spot weld here. Some of these are obvious, but some are just not, and so there's probably others here that I can't see, but I'm gonna drill these obvious ones out first. There's probably another weld in here. It's hard to tell without, I don't want to just drill a hole just for the sake of drilling, but I really want to kind of be sure. And I can be sure when I start to pry this up if there's another spot in there that I missed, and then I'll drill it out then. Yeah, this is gonna be pretty messy looking once I separate this, and then I'll go back and put what I think is there's some type of a plastic filler that a lot of the folks are using to cover these previously lead joints. All right guys, so here's where I'm at. I've got the old tail panel pulled off. I've trial fit this right quarter panel a couple of times, put in a few screws, try to get it lined up. I've still got some more adjusting to do, but what I've got to do now is just finish getting this full wheel well out so I can put the new one in. I need to have all the mating pieces that this quarter is going to mount to in place when I screw it all together, and then, you know, check this deck lid to make sure it's going to come down and leave me the gaps I want. So I'm going to finish up taking this wheel well out and start trying to trial fit in the new one. Okay, so this full wheel well is attached all along here. So I drilled out these spot welds from the frame, the inner structure. These spot welds along here in the trunk area, I've already broke those loose. And I'd already taken it loose from the old trunk floor because I got this complete one-piece floor in here. And in here, I had to cut it loose here. And this rocker. Now this rocker's been damaged. I think this is someone attempting to do some repair work, and I'm not sure if they did some welds and then tried to pull it out and then put all this filler over it. But anyway, this rocker is pretty well boogered. So what I've done is I've ordered an outside rocker. I'm not planning to use the whole thing, but I'm thinking I'm going to splice it in somewhere along here to give me a good clean rear rocker piece here. The rest of the rocker's in great shape, and I didn't weld it, this one-piece floor, I didn't weld it on the inside here because I knew I might have to do some work here. So the other thing I'm going to be doing is cleaning this all out and putting some primer over it before I cover it up with the wheel well. But at this point, let me knock this thing out so I can get that new one-piece wheel well set in place.